Flash 1 Minute War. The Flash and the Flash family move at such speeds that if you had a villain that could also move at that speed, you could have an entire war in 1 minute. And that's the story we're going to bring you today. Flash 1 Minute War is a series that came out about 6 months ago. It stars Wally West, Barry Allen, and the rest of the Flash family, and how they're going to deal with a villain that can also move at the speed force. It's a part of the Wally West run, but it does stand alone as its own story as it features Barry, Wally, and the rest of the Flash family. This is Comicstorian. I take videos, turn them into audio dramas, and I allow you to catch up with your comic books by watching these to help you understand what you should add to your collection. Today we're going to be bringing you Flash 1 Minute War. Let's get into that full story. The commander of the fraction stares into the void. One of the bridge crew members looks at him. We've reached the desired tributary. Egress initiated. The crewman says, and the commander nods. Begin descent. The fraction has arrived on Earth. Friends and family have gathered together for some much-needed downtime at the home of Wally West. Everyone is enjoying the barbecue when they look up into the sky, shocked, as the massive ship descends upon Central City. Over in the desert, Max Mercury looks up at the setting sun, a smile on his face. Well, old fella, it's time to see where the wind takes you, he says to himself before speeding off into a run. But before he can break through the speed force, he stops himself to see the massive ship. In the city, Jesse Quick is fighting off a monster alongside Our Man. The monster is defeated, and the citizens are now looking up into the sky with fear. Kid Flash and Impulse, meanwhile, are stopping a robbery, arguing over who will get credit for the bust, but they stop as they see the ship descending upon the city. At a dinner date, Barry Allen is suddenly caught off guard, asking Iris to repeat herself. Don't play flustered scientist with me, Barry. You heard me. I want to know where this is going, our relationship, she tells him, and Iris explains that she wants a family someday, and slides a ring box across the table. So, Barry, what do you say? Want to spend the rest of your life with me? She asks, but before Barry can answer, everything seems to freeze. Iris isn't moving, and the drinks have stopped pouring, and a fly is suspended in midair. Barry looks out the window just as a massive ship makes an impact into the city, a wave of destruction crashing over the seemingly frozen city. Barry moves fast, grabbing a hold of Iris as the destruction is reaching them. Across the city, the rest of the Flash family continues at super speed, everyone else frozen in time. Aboard the fraction ship, the commander turns to his crew. Deploy the wall, he orders. Massive metal arms falling from the ship, crushing more of the city that isn't already in ruins. The blades connect, creating a massive wall around the towering vessel. The commander nods in satisfaction. Begin the culling, he orders. Back over at the restaurant, Barry pulls himself out of the rubble. Iris! He screams as he begins to dig through that destruction, and it doesn't take long, but he manages to pull her free. He cradles her broken body before he lets out a scream. No! Back over at Wally's home, he struggles to his feet, Linda nearby. I'm okay, he tells her, looking at the debris and destruction that is reaching them. What just happened? He asks as he looks around at their friends and family who are frozen in time. Something hit like a meteor, but Wally, before it hit, it felt like someone switched my powers on, and I can't seem to turn them off, Linda tells him. Wally looks to what his son seems to have done to save them. I think he must have used the tree as a shield before the wave hit. He saved our lives, Wally tells his daughter. At the spire, the walls have begun to open up to allow tanks to move out into the destruction of the city. Kid Flash and Impulse stand nearby. That's a big wall, a very big wall, Impulse notes, and he looks to Kid Flash. We should go find out what's on the other side. But Kid Flash shakes his head and points out that they should find out why they can't slow down, why they're moving at top speed all the time. Besides, I've already started running into it, and whatever it's made of, it seems to be frictionless. Wally says, and Impulse tries to vibrate through the wall, but merely slams into it. Suddenly, the wall begins to open, and the two teens are shocked, so they begin to run, and in a blur of motion, they're suddenly behind a nearby wall. Get down! Jay Garrick hisses at them. The trio watch as tanks begin to rumble out over the massive spire. It's like some kind of invasion, Kid Flash whispers, and Jay shakes his head. No, boys, this is a war. Meanwhile, Wally is running through the destroyed city in his uniform, but he stops as he hears Barry crying. He runs into the room to find his mentor, cradling Iris. Barry looks up, tears in his eyes. She was there. And then, Wally, oh, Wally. He gasps, and Wally hugs Barry and Iris. But he looks up as he sees the alien craft flying overhead, ruining their mourning period. Barry, let's get her back to the house. It's not safe here. We're going to figure this out, okay? Wally tells Barry, who struggles to his feet, lifting Iris's body up into his arms. But another craft buzzes over them and opens fire. The pair of flashes split up, forcing the craft to follow Wally. Rounds spitting out of the front of the ship, blasting the ground at Wally's feet. But Wally manages to grab a piece of rebar, whirling around at the craft. Lay down your arms and prepare for capture, the pilot calls over a loudspeaker, and Wally smiles. Ha! First time on Earth, huh, pal? He says before throwing the rebar so hard that it spins, ripping off one of the ship's wings. It then begins to careen through the air, exploding against a wall. Enjoy your visit, Wally snaps. Meanwhile, Kid Flash, Impulse, and Jay have all been discovered, with Jay throwing the kids onto the ground as the blast rips through the wall that they were hiding behind. Oh, I should have stayed in the future, Impulse moans as he gets back to his feet and the alien soldiers come towards them. But Jay stands ready. Roll on your shoulders, boys. If we're gonna die today, we'll die like men, tall and proud. Impulse looks at him. Is there a second option? But a tank suddenly flips through the air, landing on the soldiers. Jay looks up at their savior, smiling. Why, Miss Quick? Aren't you a sight for sore eyes? He says as Jess steps out. Jess explains that our man's Miracle managed to save him and she hid him away before she came to help. Jay asks if she has any idea who the aliens are. I think they're called the Fraction. Max and I saw a spider that looked just like the one that landed here when we were searching for Barry. We also saw the way they left the world. And Jay, it wasn't good. Aboard the Spire, the commander was receiving reports of the metagened humans that are being captured and brought to the ship. One of the officers steps forward. Sir, we found evidence of organic conduits. Actually, a lot of organic conduits. The officer says, and the commander is intrigued. How many? This area alone, our estimates are 5 or more, the officer reports, and the commander orders his men to capture these conduits and bring them to the ship. Awaken the hunter, he orders before turning away. 5. The Empress will be most impressed, he whispers to himself. Outside of the city, one of the Fraction scouts are reporting that something is chasing him. He looks back in fear, but suddenly finds Max Mercury running alongside him. Max grabs the scout, ripping him off his bike, demanding to know what is going on. The Fraction is forever! The scout snaps before hitting a button that electrocutes him to death. So, not much for conversation, Max observes before turning and running back towards the city in the distance. He arrives quickly at Wally's home, where the rest of the Flash family and survivors have gathered. Everyone quickly greets each other and they share stories about what happened to them. But everyone quickly becomes quiet as Barry and Wally return with the body of Iris. As Barry carries her inside, Jay steps forward. Let me take care of her. You've carried her for too long, he offers, but Barry shakes his head. Not long enough. He says quietly, going into the house. Meanwhile, aboard the Spire, the hunter has been released from her prison. She steps out, her hunting hounds pulling at their chains. Come, Miss Murder. The Fraction needs you. Her keeper shouts. At Wally's house, Barry sits by the bedside, still holding Iris's hand. Wally puts his hand onto Barry's shoulder. Barry, we have to go. I know it feels like it's been days, but Jay wants to talk to us. Barry doesn't move for a few moments, finally leaning forward and kissing Iris on the forehead. I love you forever, Iris, he whispers. The pair head into the kitchen for Jay's war council. He explains to them that they have been doing recon and figured out that the ship destroyed a huge portion of Central City and Keystone on impact. Since then, the aliens have been moving aircrafts, tanks, and soldiers into the city. Everyone questions why they're moving at super speed and how come the Flash family can't seem to shut off their powers. But it's Wally who believes that the Fraction must be tapping into the Speed Force with their technology. We're gonna need one of those vehicles. If I can get a look at their tech, maybe we can reverse engineer a solution, Barry says. It's Linda who steps forward, reminding everyone that they need a secure base for the kids and those who are frozen in time. So Wally nods. I know just the place. While everyone is putting their plans into motion, Impulse dashes off. Kid Flash managing to catch up to him, questioning where he's going. Don't worry about it. If Barry needs a car, I'll get him a car. Kid Flash shakes his head and rushes after him. Aboard the Spire, the commander isn't happy that his elite soldiers can't seem to find the conduits. Where's Miss Murder? The commander demands. She's hunting in the eastern part of the city. She has yet to fail us, one of the soldiers reports. The commander nods and orders the culling to continue. And as the darkness falls, Kid Flash and Impulse are hiding in the ruins, watching as a fraction tank hovers by. All right, what's the plan? Impulse smiles at him. You do understand why they call me Impulse, right? He zips forward, hiding in the tank. Kid Flash sighs, following after the boy. Unknown to them, Miss Murder is close by, her hounds having already picked up the teen's scent. Meanwhile, Wally has led the rest of the family to the Mr. Terrific lab, where he believes that they will be safe, as they begin to move everyone inside. And Max looks around. Hey, where's Bart? He asks, and Linda notices that Wallace isn't there either. Oh, Argle Bargle. The tank that the two boys are hiding in has returned to the Spire, so the boys sneak out and discover that they're inside of the Fraction ship. They begin to sneak through the tunnels until they find a strange glowing conduit. Maybe it's a battery. We should take it, Impulse says. Kid Flash looks at him in shock as Impulse begins to unplug the conduit, though this leads to alarms beginning to sound on the command deck. Cutting back to the kids, they're now trying to carry the large conduit out of the ship. They round the corner into a pair of soldiers who order them to stop. See, I told you this wouldn't work, Kid Flash shouts, and Impulse merely smiles. Ye have little faith. We just have to use this as a shield and ram them. He shouts as the pair rush forward, knocking the soldiers onto their backs, but they look up to realize that they've now broken the conduit. Great! You broke it! Now they know we're here. Can we get going already? Impulse sighs, looking down. Hey, yeah, sure, but is there someone in the cylinder? They manage to open up the conduit and discover a young boy inside. Okay, this place is getting weirder and weirder, Impulse says as they help the boy out of the battery. But they both look up to see Miss Murder and her hounds at the end of the hall. Who's that? The young battery boy begins to become awake and he looks up in horror. Her name is Miss Murder! Run! He gasps, and they turn to run but find that the hounds have circled around them. The young boy tells them that Miss Murder hunts by reading their thoughts. Thoughts? That's perfect. All we have to do is not think. Easy, follow me, Impulse shouts, and the trio begins to run, with Impulse leading them by acting on impulse. They manage to slip around the hunter, and they round another corner to find the commander and the soldiers. Kill them! The commander shouts, with the soldiers opening fire, but the young boys suddenly juke to the side, allowing the blaster fire to hit the pursuing hounds. The trio then return to the hangar, where they steal another tank, but Miss Murder suddenly lands on the roof, causing them all to scream in fear. Impulse reaches out for the controls, and the tank comes to life, reacting to his speed force. As the tank careens through the hangar and out the exit, Miss Murder is suddenly knocked free, with the commander arriving in time to shout for his soldiers to pursue the tank. It's a little bit later that Impulse brings the tank to a screeching halt outside of the house, in front of Wally and Max. One vehicle as requested, Impulse says with a smile. While the adults aren't happy with the risk the boys took, they are proud of them for saving the conduit and bringing them the vehicle. Wally walks around the back, opening up the tank's doors. Any idea what's in here? But they all stop and stare in shock, because inside of the back of the tank is a collection of frozen superhumans. Wally just looks at Superman. Okay, I was not expecting that. A little bit of time passes after Wally discovered Superman was one of the metahumans being used as a battery, and the group of frozen metahumans are now moved inside of the Flash family household. Wally and Barry stand before the frozen Superman, who's actually trying to move very slowly. Superman is trying to say. Impulse looks at the Man of Steel. Is this gonna take all day? He asks, and Barry nods. I'm sure with enough time, Superman might be able to catch up, but right now it must look all like a blur to him. The trio return to the others, where the young conduit explains that he was a corrections officer that was jumping through dimensions when he was captured by the Fraction and turned into a living battery to power their ship. He explains that the Fraction's technology allows them to tap into the Speed Force, and it is in everything from their armor to their vehicles. but I've noticed that we're still going a little faster than them, Jay points out. The others nod, and Barry believes that the spire must act as an antenna to allow them to channel the speed force through their tech. Wally nods, looking around. If we can get that wall open, I can get to the spire before they do something about it, he says, and everyone breaks up to prepare for the plan. With Wally leading Barry, Kid Flash, and Impulse into the garage, he shows them his old muscle car. Okay, run that past me again, Barry says to Wally, and Wally tells him that if they put one of the fraction engines into this car, he might be able to drive it into the spire. If these things work the way you're thinking, an organic conduit should be able to speed it up so that it becomes a moving bomb, Wally says, and Barry nods, believing that the engine could create a friction barrier that could protect Wally from the bomb. After a bit more discussion of the plan and the possible pitfalls, Barry looks at the two young speedsters. All right, boys, let's get to work. We have a montage of preparation, and when it's all done, Jay asks if they're ready. Ray comes in wearing her costume, wondering when she gets to join the fight, but Wally tells his daughter that she has to stay behind and protect the frozen heroes. She starts to argue, but Jessie Quick steps up to the young girl. What would happen if somebody broke in and stole the greatest hero on Earth? She asks as she motions to Superman. We need to protect Superman, Our Man, and all of the rest. I don't know if it's any bigger than that. She fist bumps Ray. Flash girls forever, they both say with a smile. Jay reminds them all that if something goes wrong, they can all cut their losses and return to the base. But Barry shakes his head. No, we're gonna finish this today, no matter what, he says harshly. He walks into the next room with Wally following him, and Barry admits to Wally that Iris asked him to marry her at the last moment. But he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a ring, revealing that he was going to ask her himself. Wally pulls Barry into a hug. Barry, we're gonna make them pay, you hear me? You and me. We're gonna make sure these people never do this again. He promises. So a short time later, the battle for our future has begun. The speedsters are attacking the wall, drawing the Fraction's attention, and Barry wields one of the Fraction's cannons, shooting at their aircraft and getting their attention. Showtime, Wally, he says over the radio, and Wally nods, revving the muscle car's new Speed Force engine. He begins to roar towards the city at super speed. The rest of the speedsters are trying to keep the wall open for Wally, but Jay is suddenly blasted from behind. The commander lifts Jay up, an energy weapon piercing the old speedster's back. You thought you had a chance, didn't you? Hiding in some hole making plans? Well, we found out, and Miss Murder is infiltrating your headquarters. Soon you'll be in my care, all for the glory of the Fraction. The commander gloats. Meanwhile, back at Mr. Terrific's base, Ray is trying to keep herself entertained, but she hears a strange noise coming out of the darkness. Hello? She calls out as she gets up to investigate, and a low growling emits from the shadows. Back with Jay, the commander leans over his shoulder. What was your plan? Open the section of the wall for what? A frontal assault? Jay looks up and smiles. Now that would just be stupid, he gasps. Elsewhere, Jess and Linda have held open a second portion of the wall, allowing Wally to blaze through with his Speed Force car. But the commander calls back to the command desk, ordering them to use the emitter on Wally's car and overpower him. A blast of Speed Force energy fires out of the top of the spire, hitting Wally in his car. He's suddenly held still and can feel his body disintegrating. I can't phase! I'm not like this! He gasps before disappearing. The commander laughs as he drops Jay to the ground. That's the problem with heroes. You put your heart into everything, thinking that if you just try hard enough, it's going to be okay. Back with Ray, she stands her ground, guarding the frozen heroes. I don't know who you are, but you can't have them, she shouts at Miss Murder. But the hunter rushes forward, grabbing Ray by the throat, lifting her into the air. The two hounds begin to sniff around Superman, who is still moving at a mere fraction of a second. As Miss Murder holds Ray up close, Superman manages to push through, and he grabs one of the hounds' tails. This distracts Miss Murder for a moment, and Ray is able to kick her way free. She rushes over to her brother Jai, throwing him at Miss Murder. My brother turns Speed Force into strength, and Uncle Barry said that there's a ton of Speed Force spilling out everywhere, so Jai's probably super strong, which is great, because we've been practicing a couple of moves. I call this one a wrecking ball, she shouts, and Jai slams into Miss Murder and her hounds, which forces the hunter to leave. I'll be back, young one, she says in Iray's mind. I can't wait, the young speedster shouts, turning back to Superman, who has managed to look at her. Thanks for the assist. I guess you're still pretty great, she tells the Man of Steel. Now it's time to save the day, she says to herself. Back over at the Spire, the Flash family has now all been captured, but the ground begins to rumble around them, and the commander looks up in shock. Is that thunder? He wonders, and Jay smiles as he turns his head. No, that's my granddaughter. Iray is rushing forward, using her Speed Force powers to carry the super strong frozen Jai behind her. It's like your comic said, Jai. No one can determine my destiny but me. I am a hero, and there's nothing in this world that can stand in my way, she shouts, using her powers to fling Jai around the clearing, knocking the fraction forces away with her brother's body. She screeches to a stop before everyone. I figured out my superhero name. Call me Thunderheart. Come on, let's go wham on some bad guys, she says to the other. Cool! Kid Flash and Impulse shout together as Max knocks one of the soldiers away and orders the kids to follow him. Elsewhere, Jess and Linda are shoved onto the Fraction's tanks, but after the doors close, the driver turns back to them, pulling off his helmet to reveal the young conduit. Just sit back and relax. I'll take it from here, he tells the ladies with a smile. The rest of the Flash family continue to fight their way to Barry, as Barry begins to take a moment to tell Iray what happened. She then notices that the Fractions are dragging Jay back inside of the wall. Poppy! She shouts in anger, rushing forward, but the wall begins to close. Iray tries to throw Jai at them, but he bounces off the closed wall, and the rest of the speedsters turn as the tank rumbles towards them. But it comes to a stop, and the doors slide open to reveal Jess and the others. Get in before they come back with reinforcements, Jess shouts. So Linda gets in, rushing to Iray, who's pounding on the wall. Let me in! I'm gonna tear it down, I swear! She shouts, tears spilling out of her eyes. Linda rushes forward, pulling her daughter into a hug, as they both cry. And finally, Linda looks up to see Jai still bouncing into the wall. Is that your brother? She whispers in surprise. Later, inside of the Spire, the commander hits Jay again, forcing the old speedster to sag in his bonds. Tell me where your headquarters is, and the pain will stop, the commander tells him, but Jay smiles. Pain? Pal, this is nothing compared to the last time I was captured. They hit me so hard my molars came out. You're a lightweight. The commander smacks him again, but is quickly informed that Miss Murder has returned and knows the secret base of the speedsters. With that, the commander leaves the room getting ready. But back at their base, everyone begins to mourn the death of Wally West, when Barry suddenly has an idea. He speeds past everyone, beginning to scribble on the whiteboard. Together we can fix this, he whispers to himself. Jess runs into the room to inform everyone that the Fraction is approaching. But Barry turns to them all. I know how to win this war. Not just win, but make it so that this never happened in the first place. At the Spire, the Doctor leans over Jay, preparing to begin his experiments. Jay smiles, opening his mouth. Maybe you can start at my teeth. I think your boss might have loosened something. He then spits one of his teeth out at super speed, breaking through the Doctor's armor. The laser drill falls onto the table, breaking Jay's bonds, allowing him to free himself. He gets to his feet, managing to knock out the soldiers that are rushing him. He then stands, catching his breath as he arms himself with the Fraction's weapons, hefting one of the rifles. All right, it's time for the Fraction to see what Jay Garrick can do. He grunts as he prepares for war. The final plan has begun. Jesse realizes that the world doesn't need Jess Quick right now. It needs the Ring of Liberty Bell. She puts on her mother's old costume and joins the rest of the Flash family. I'm ready, she tells them, and Max nods. Your mother would be proud, Jesse. Barry looks at the rest of the family, reminding them of what is at stake. 2 miles before we make things right. All we have to do is stick together. It's time to end this once and for all, he says as they all look at the Spire in the distance. Inside the Fraction Fortress, Admiral Vao is brought into the view screen. His generals point out that the Flash family is gathering. Ready the forces, but hold. We'll let them make the first move, he orders, pondering what the family could possibly be planning. It was earlier that Barry gathered everyone together, jotting down his plan of attack. He explains that the Spire acts as a giant antenna that channels the Speed Force to all of the Fraction forces who are armed with artificial conduits. That if the entire family taps into the Speed Force and channels it back to the antenna, it should overload all of the artificial conduits and send them all back in time. before all of this even happened. But back in the current day, the Flash family takes off on their run, lightning cracking behind them as they rush towards the spiral. Gathering together, they've created a Speed Force shield that allows them to shrug off the laser blast from the Fraction flyers. As they get closer to the wall, Barry looks at Jessie. "You're up, Liberty Bell," he shouts, and she nods, pulling forward, uttering the Speed Force equation that allows her to channel it into super strength. She lashes out at the wall, punching a hole through it. Back in the past, when they were all hearing the plan, they were all happy about it. And that's when Ira jumped up and down that she was going to get her dad back. But Linda looks at Barry and knows that something isn't right. Back in the battle, the family has now bursted through the wall, with Admiral Vell ordering the antenna to fire upon them like it did Wally. "We're almost over our target," the young conduit shouts to the others. The family leap into the air, vibrating through the ground, dropping them inside of the ship. But back in the past, Linda finds Barry as he's getting ready. "What aren't you telling us?" she asks, pointing out that she was an investigative reporter and knows that he is lying. Barry looks at her and explains, "Wally won't be coming back. The Flash family members are connected to the Speed Force, so all of them remain outside of the realms of time. They are paradoxes in and of themselves. I'm sorry," he tells her quietly. The two hug and they mourn before they're interrupted by Ira. "Mom, are you okay?" she asks, and Linda smiles at her daughter, leading her out of the room. "Yes, honey. These are happy tears. Come on, let's go find a good hiding spot for Jai while we go save your father," she tells her. Meanwhile, during all of this, inside of the spire, Jay Garrick was captured and has freed himself and has taken the guns and weapons of the Fraction. He's now sneaking through the vents armed with a big alien blaster, and he drops down into the corridor facing two soldiers. "Hey, boys," he says with a smile before raising the weapon and firing it, dropping them both. "Hope I'm not too late to the party," he says to himself as he keeps moving. The family themselves have dropped into the ship with the living conduit telling them that they need to go. "Then let's go! Sooner we get there, sooner my dad is back!" Ira shouts with glee, but the family is stopped by Admiral Vell and his generals. "I'm afraid your father is not coming back, small one, but if you come with us, we can use you, give you purpose," Vell says with a smile. The others look to Barry for what to do next, but he sees Jay moving in the shadows behind the Fraction. Barry glares at Vell, telling him that they have another option. "Fight!" he snaps, and Jay leaps out of the shadows, opening fire, allowing Barry to rush forward, slamming into Admiral Vell. "Flash family, forward!" he shouts, and the rest of the family join in the fight, with Ira having fun by kicking the Fraction in the groin. Barry knocks Vell to the ground and keeps hammering him with punches. "You took everything from me!" he shouts, but Vell catches his fist, throwing him back up to the surface. "Not yet!" he snarls, and Barry looks up as the Fraction crafts approach him. Vell leaps up, stalking towards him. "There's no one left to save you! It's over!" But somewhere, sometime, lost in the space and time continuum, Wally opens up his eyes to see a caveman and a dinosaur leaning over him. "Huh?" he gasps in surprise, turning as the gold beetle appears. "It's okay! You're okay!" she says, and Wally looks at her asking where is he. She smiles, motioning to the team of heroes behind her. "Right where you're supposed to be! It's called the Time Point. We renamed it a while ago. Welcome to Planet Flash," she says with joy. She turns to the rest of the heroes, motioning to the gold bug vehicle behind them. "Everyone into the gold bug, and don't forget to grab your artificial conduit vests. After this, I promise to return you to whatever time you want," she says as she helps Wally to his feet, explaining that he isn't dead, that he was just supercharged with Speed Force energy. "And I melted," Wally tells her. She explains that the Speed Force actually dematerialized him as a defense mechanism and spit him outside of space and time to Planet Flash. "It used to be called the Time Point, but when we started our team, you changed it to Planet Flash," she explains, and Wally is confused. He asks about the team of heroes, but Gold Beetle tells him that he asked her to gather a team and bring them here. "And I am so very excited to explain this to you." She begins to explain that everybody who seemingly died in the Heroes in Crisis event, she went back and saved them right before they actually died. But before she could go in depth into what she actually did, Wally finally stops her. Wait, I'll have to hear this later. The Earth is being attacked," he tells her, and she nods, telling him that this is why the heroes have been gathered. The artificial conduit vests will allow each of them to help for 1 minute before they're slowed back down. She motions to the ship. Come on, it's gonna be fun, she shouts with joy. Back on Earth, Vel is gloating as the Flash family continues their battle, but Barry rushes forward, slamming into him with his fist, throwing him to the ground. He grabs a hold of his vest, ripping it off. Let's see how you do without your vest, he shouts, leaving Vel frozen on the ground. No way to move in speed time. Barry returns to the family, telling them to stick to the plan, though Jay points out that they're going to need a distraction to get past all of the Fraction forces. Up above them, the Gold Beetle appears and the heroes leap out. Let's kick some Kerfrits! Gold Beetle shouts with joy, and Barry orders the family to continue with the plan, but Iray is stopped by Miss Murder as she leaps down with her hounds. You're not going anywhere, little girl, she says in Iray's mind. Sorry, lady. Uncle Barry says I need to leave, Iray says to her defiantly. But Ugg leaps in the way of Miss Murder. He then turns, motioning to Iray. Ugg! He shouts, and Iray turns to leave. Thanks, Mr. Caveman, sir? She shouts, and Ugg turns, rushing at Miss Murder. As the battle continues, Wally and Gold Beetle leap into a tank to continue fighting, but all of the new heroes hit their 1 minute mark and freeze in time. Vel's generals are searching for him, and are shocked to find the Admiral can still move without his vest. Your harness is destroyed, but you're moving. That means you're an organic, the generals realize. They suddenly turn on Vel as he shouts at them that the Empress knew that he was an organic, but ordered him to keep it a secret, knowing that the Fraction would never accept him. The generals don't believe him and order the Fraction to turn on their leader. With a bellow of rage, Vel rushes into them, tapping into the Speed Force. Meanwhile, the Flash family has reached the base of the antenna. After a pep talk from Max Mercury, who believes that every member of the Flash family is supposed to be here at this exact moment, the family leap down and begin running. Let's do this together! Barry urges them all. But as Vel has defeated his generals and moves into the chamber, he realizes what the Flash family is trying to do. And he knows how to defeat them. But he doesn't get a chance. Hey, Sparky! Look out below! Wally shouts as he leaps down, kicking into Vel at super speed. You! Vel snaps and Wally nods. Yeah, me, the Flash, the guy who's about to kick your butt. The two of them launch into a speed fight, raining blows on each other until Wally manages to kick Vel into one of the conduit battery compartments. He then rushes forward, slamming the compartment shut. This must be one of those batteries that Impulse and Kid Flash told me about, which means if what I hear is right, you are about to send every one of us wearing those harnesses back in time, he says with a smile as Vel is pounding on the battery. The Speed Force begins to crackle all around them as time begins to rewind. The devastation of the city is reversed as the Fractions haven't even arrived yet. And Wally looks at Vel and smiles. Nighty-night, loser. 1 minute earlier. The Fraction generals look around the bridge, shocked that their admiral has suddenly disappeared. The highest-ranking general turns to the bridge crew and orders them to turn around, not wishing to continue the invasion without knowing what happened to their admiral, knowing that they can always return. Below them on Earth, Iray rushes into the arms of her father, and the family celebrates. I told you it'd be fun! Gold Beetle cheers as their team gathers, but Barry has already rushed away. He runs back to the restaurant where he and Iris were having their dinner. She's angry that he seemingly disappeared, but he bursts through the door, telling her that he wants nothing more than to spend the rest of his life with her. I love you, Iris West, and nothing in the world is going to stop me from loving you from now until forever, he tells her as they embrace. Everyone in the restaurant cheers as they kiss. Back at Wally's house, he says goodbye to Gold Beetle and her team, and he offers to have them come in and join the party that they're having. But Gold Beetle politely declines. I can't. When Jai and I meet in the future for the first time, it's special. I don't want to ruin either of our memories of that. Besides, I have to drop a few of these guys back into their own time zones, trying to make sense of all of this weird continuity that I created. The living conduit then joins them, but first hugs Linda goodbye. You know, I never heard your name, she says, and he smiles at her. Wade. My parents named me Wade after a cool relative or something. She tells him, and Linda hugs him, remembering that Wally has a cool uncle named Wade. But she shrugs off the thought. Wally and Linda hug for a moment before heading back to the party with their friends and family. Elsewhere, Impulse has joined Max Mercury in the desert, telling him that he wants to travel to the next time with him. We're family, Max. Wherever you go, I go. Come on, let's see what's next. It should be fun. Impulse says, and he and Max start running. The Speed Force gathers around them as they're about to break the barrier and run into the future. And there you have it, a short full story today, but I wanted to bring you the 1 Minute War. With the movie coming out, I thought it'd be a good time to do that. And if you subscribe and hit that notification bell, we're gonna be compiling all of the Wally West videos into a Wally West story, a full story very soon. Wally battles against the Justice League Dark, goes through time and space, and those stories are linked down below if you wanna watch them now. But like and subscribe if you wanna get another giant Wally West storyline very soon, right here at Comicstorian. On that note, I'll see you guys later.